Hello, my name's Ben, and this is the first ever Ben's Top 10s. It's going to be a list of things, top 10 things that I like, whatever it might be. Today it's actually going to be called Top 10 Movies You've Probably Never Seen. You may have seen them, but they're not exactly high-profile films for the most part, or maybe they didn't do as great in the box office as I thought they were going to do, but they're movies that I definitely love. For different reasons. I do have two honorable mentions I didn't put on this list. The majority of this movies that I put on this list are from the 90s and early 2000s, and there's one 80s film on here. But there's two movies that came out last year that were really good, and actually one of them is one of my favorite movies. It's my favorite movie from last year. That's Peanut Butter Falcon. It's a great movie. You should check it out. The other one is 5 Feet Apart. It's one of my daughter's favorite movie, and it's very good, tear-jerker kind of film. If you like that sort of thing, they're both dramas. Peanut Butter Falcon's a little more, it's more of an uplifting film at the end, but really throughout the whole thing. I find myself smiling and many times during the course of watching the film, and it's just a great portrayal of two people that need something in their lives, or three people really, that need things in their lives and are able to find it together and kind of become a family. So now the honorable mentions are done, we're going on to the actual list. So, top 10 movies you probably haven't seen. Number 10. Now this one is funny because I haven't even seen it in like 20 years, and I only saw it one time. But back in the 90s and so when I was in college in the summer, when I didn't have school to go to, I have a job and have to work, but there are other times where a lot of guys went home, a lot of my friends or whoever went home for the summer, and I stayed for quite a few summers, and I was in college for quite a few years, as a lot of people know who know me. But I used to go to Family Video and Blockbuster and just walk through the dollar bin aisles or the cheaper aisles and see if there is something that kind of sparked an interest or whatever, and that's where most of these movies actually probably came from, is during that time. And one of the movies that caught my eye was this movie, Wrestling Ernest Hemingway. It is a movie about two gentlemen in their 70s who are kind of at different places, and they're kind of like complete opposites, but somehow they form a bond and a friendship, and through that they kind of both grow and become better lives, and it's just kind of like the study and the joy of life and finding the joy of life. It's got two great performances from Robert Duvall and one of my personal favorites, Richard Harris, who is awesome in just about everything he's in, but he's really awesome in this movie too. So Wrestling Ernest Hemingway is number 10, only because I've only seen it once, but I can still vividly remember certain scenes and things that were just, they'll never leave my mind, and I need to see that again. So that's part of the reason why I put it on this list, because I need to see it again. Number 9 on my list today is an action movie. I had to put at least one action movie on here. It's actually an action sci-fi movie, because there aren't very many sci-fi or action movies that aren't well known. So I had to find one that I own that was one that had great acting, a lot of action. You've got dragons. What more could you ask for? Plus, it's got two of my best favorite actors of all time with Reign of Fire. You got Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale. It's set in our world, but some construction workers dig too deep, and they actually end up digging out a dragon at some point, which then kind of goes crazy and destroys a whole bunch of things. And this takes place about 20 years after that, when the dragons have pretty much owned the world, and the humans are hiding and trying to survive in this world where the dragons reign now. So it's a great action movie. It's got some things in it that are, sci-fi, action, all the things you could ever love when it comes to that sort of a film, and two great actors. So what more could you ask for? So Reign of Fire, number 9. Number 8, this one could be a little controversial. This is a movie that's very dear to my heart, because when I was a kid, my brother and I would watch, cartoons on Saturdays, and then in the afternoon there'd be, like on WGN or some of these other channels would have some sort of movie on, and usually it was junk or whatever, but every now and again we'd have a good one. And I remember my brother and I were watching a Zorro movie one time, and I was just taken away with the action and the adventure and the sword fighting and all these things that were going on, and the heroics, and this is before there was superhero movies. There was no superhero movies other than Superman at this point. So, you know, Zorro was like a superhero, and there were many Zorro films long before this one that came out in the 80s. But now, and because of that, it really meant a lot to me. Then years later, I found it somewhere, and I bought it and watched it, and realized that it was nothing like what I remembered as a kid. It ended up being a comedy, and it was, it still had all the action and the adventure and all that sort of thing, and the heroics, but it also had comedy and, you know, drama and a love story and all the things that all great movies have. But it could never be made today because it's got a little bit of a, it's not PC in today's world, let's put it that way. So number 8 is Zorro the Gay Blade. Yes, it's on VHS. That's how long I've had this movie. It stars George Hamilton, who is, yes, he's you know, the guy you know of as Super Tan. That's him. But he plays Zorro's 2 sons. Actually, he plays 2 characters in this film. So Zorro is an older at this point, and at the beginning of the movie, he sends out a letter to both of his twin sons that they need to come home because the alcalde in California has taken over. There's a new regime, and he's oppressing the people of California. And so with that letter, both of his sons come home. One of them's in England and one of them's in Spain, and the one from Spain comes home first, and he does not know that his father was Zorro, and neither does the other brother. Neither of them know. And they get there, and they see that everything's a little different back then. And by the time they get there, their father is passed away, and that's when he realizes, or he's actually left in his will, that his father was Zorro, and he must take over the mantle of Zorro to save the people. And he does, the first son who gets back, but eventually something happens. He actually gets injured, and he can't keep being Zorro. And his brother ends up showing up, who happens to be a gay man, and he decides that, or his brother asks him, he's like, I need you to be Zorro. And he's like, I can't be Zorro, I can't do it. And he's like, yes, you can. And he does it. And he's just as exciting and just as adventurous. And it's crazy, it's weird, it's kind of like a Mel Brooks type movie, but it's one of those ones where I remember it all through my life. And then when I was, in my early 20s, I went and I found it was at some like Shopko or someplace. I bought it and watched it, and I was like, wow, this is totally different than I remembered it, but it was still hilarious. There's so many funny parts in it, and it's really, honestly, you got to look past the title and look more to the adventure and the laughter of the film. It's one of my favorites. Zorro the Gay Blade is number 8. Number 7 is another one of those movies I found back in college, walking through the Family Video or Blockbuster or wherever, and it's a drama. Most of these are dramas, and it's about a Jewish boy who is very, very intelligent and a top-notch athlete. He's probably the best quarterback in the East Coast. And because of that, there's a Catholic private school that recruits him to be their quarterback because they want to win football games. And so it's a football movie, and that's the reason why I looked at it first. I was like, oh, football movie, cool. It takes place in 1950s or 60s or somewhere in there. But what ends up, the story really is more about this young man being a Jewish person in this place with all these Catholics, other students that are all Catholic. And he can't let them know he's Jewish, because as soon as he gets there, all he hears is jokes about Jewish people. And he has to, he knows, what would you guys do if you knew who I was? So he has to try to keep that from everyone and still believe in what he believes in, and sit through all of the ridicule and all of the, the persecution of these other students and some teachers as well. And it's just a great story about perseverance. Sometimes it's tragic at points, and it's got really good acting too, as well, except for maybe one person. But I'll tell you, it's called School Ties. It's number 7. It's got Brendan Fraser. It's got a really young Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. It's got Chris O'Donnell, unfortunately. He's the weak link of the film. But the other three guys do a great job, especially Matt Damon. He's a villain in this movie, and he's excellent. Brendan Fraser plays the young Jewish man. So it's a really good story. It's a good story about holding your convictions, believing in who you are and what you are, and not letting other people deter you from that, and just standing up for yourself. So, School Ties, number 7. I can't have only one action movie. I got to put at least another action movie in here. So I found one that's from my favorite actor, one of my favorite actors of all time. I got probably 3 of them that are my favorite actors of all time. This is my favorite American actor, and he is a guy who for a while was pretty high up in the popularity, and he did a whole lot of movies in the 90s, and then he kind of fell off after a couple films. But the movie I'm going to talk about now is called The Saint, starring Val Kilmer, one of my favorite guys. In The Saint, Val plays a secret agent, kind of like a James Bond type guy, who is kind of a spy. He gets hired out to do things, steal things, stuff like that. And what he does is before he does whatever mission he's doing, he kind of goes in to kind of feel the area out. And he disguises himself as a different person every time. And then every person he disguises himself is based on some saint in the world, in the past history. So he might be a nerdy scientist one time, and then the next time he's an eccentric artist, and then the next time he's a southern billionaire, and the next time he's a Russian spy. I don't know, who knows what he is, but he's all different characters. He plays like 9 different characters in this movie with all his different makeup and all these different things, and really it's his performance that puts it on this list, because it's Val and he's really, really, really good in this movie. But it's also got a pretty good story. It's got a nice kind of action. It's kind of got some humor here and there, and of course it has a love story in it as well. So it's got all the things that everybody could ever want. I don't know if it was a big hit or not. I know I saw it in the theater. There was maybe like 6 people with me at the time. Sean Stelton was one of them, if he's watching this. But otherwise, yeah, it's a great movie. Number 7, The Saint. Check it out. Take that back. It's not number 7. It was number 6. So number 6, The Saint. So now we're going to the top 5 here, all right? We're getting the movies that, at any point, I would be happy to just throw it in and watch it. That's how good these top 5 are. And you're going to say, you got to be kidding me when I show you this next picture. But I'm telling you, this movie, I will put it in and watch it at any time, because it is just awesome. And it's The Rocker with Rainn Wilson. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen this movie, and a lot of people haven't, it is awesome. It's hilarious. It's got a great little story to it. It's got fun. It's got a guy, he used to be a drummer in a band, right? And right before they got signed for their big contract, they kick him out of the band because the guy who signed him has a brother or a nephew or something who plays drums, and they want him to be the drummer instead, or else they won't sign him. So the rest of the band kicks him out. And this movie takes place like 20 years later, when he's still trying to live a normal life, and the band that he was in is now super duper popular and has been for the last 20 years. And he ends up somehow finding his way into his nephew's band, and all craziness ensues, and it's just got a bunch of great actors. Like, think of a bunch of crazy comedic actors that you can think of. It's got Will Arnett, Bradley Cooper, it's got Jane Lynch, it's got Fred Garland, I think is his name. It's got a young, those are just like the side characters. The main characters, you got Rainn Wilson, you got a young Emma Stone, a young Josh Gad. So you got really good actors in this movie, really good funny comedic actors, and it's also just got it's got a good story to it. It's just, I could put this movie in any time, and it's a great, enjoyable film. So number 5, The Rocker. So, now we're up to number 4, and we're bringing in my buddy Val Kilmer once again. We're talking Thunderheart. This movie is awesome. It's about a murder that takes place on a Native American reservation. And the government can't get in there and can't get any information. They can, but no one's talking to them. So they're like, you know what, we're going to send a Native American agent there. Well, they find a guy who happens to be like 1/4 Sioux Indian or whatever it is, and they send him in there, and expecting that the Native Americans in the reservation will talk to him and give him some information based on what happened with this murder. And of course, none of them want to give him any information because he's not really ever had anything to do with them his whole life, and he doesn't want to be there either. And gradually through the course of the film, he kind of finds himself and learns things about himself that he never knew. He works with the sheriff of the Native American reservation, who's played by Graham Greene. Awesome. And those two guys work together to try to piece things out. And he also has Val's character, which is Ray Lavoie, also has a higher up FBI agent that he has to work with, who is telling him, let's just go, tag it and bag it. This is the guy who did it. Let's figure it out. Let's get it out of here. And as Val investigates it more, his character Ray investigates it more, he realizes that maybe this isn't the guy who did the murder, and maybe there's more information here than what we thought. And his higher up is telling him, no, this is it. Let's get out of here. We don't want to be here anymore, do you? And he's like, oh yeah, okay. But the more he gets into it, the more he finds out that maybe things aren't quite what they all thought they were in the beginning. And it's just a great spiritual journey. You don't have to be. It's not about religion or anything like that. It's just about finding your spirituality, finding information, working together, and just having compassion for your fellow man. That's really what this movie's about too. So, Thunderheart, awesome movie, number 4. We're up to number 3. This is our last action adventure film. It's based on Alexander Dumas' book, The Count of Monte Cristo. This one is one of my daughter's favorite movies. I've showed it to her and she can't stop talking about it. She loves it. But this has got everything you could ever want. All the things I love in a movie. It's got action. It's got betrayal. It's got suspense. It's got murder. It's got, finding peace, questioning yourself, questioning your environment, questioning people that you've loved, revenge. It's got all the things you could ever want. It's amazing. If you've read the book, you probably know. It's different than the book. It's got a different ending. I prefer this movie better than the book, to be honest. It just has a little more going on with it. Some people, if you're strict on the book, you're probably going to hate it, so heads up on that. But it's just, it's a great drama. It's got a young Superman. Henry Cavill's in here. Very young. I didn't even know. One day I was watching, I was like, holy cow, it's Henry Cavill's in there. But Jim Caviezel does a great job in here as the main character. And it's just, it's an awesome movie. Just check it out. Count of Monte Cristo, number 3. We're up to my 2 favorite movies. They're probably in my top 10 movies of all time right here, these next 2. So number 2 is a movie called Instinct. This one has got 2 amazing performances by Cuba Gooding Jr. and Anthony Hopkins. It's about this esteemed anthropologist and primatologist, Ethan Powell, who is studying gorillas in Africa. He disappears for 2 years. He's found again. And when he's found, he murders 2 people. He won't talk. He's acting it's all aggression and passion. And he won't talk to anybody. They can't get anything out of him. He's violent. And they bring him back to the States. And that's Anthony Hopkins' character. And then Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Theo Calder, who is a grad student in psychiatry or psychology or something like that, and he has to go in and try to find where the violence came from, find what changed in the last 2 years when Ethan Powell disappeared. And that's where the story starts, actually. And then it just goes on from there. And you think it's going one way, and it actually goes a different way. And it has philosophy in it that I greatly agree with, and I feel people should watch this movie and maybe they'll learn a few things. But it's a great drama. It's heart-wrenching at times. You're glued to the screen almost all the time because of the performances of these 2 guys. They're just incredible. 2 great acting jobs. And it's a great story. You think it's, like I said, you think it's going one way and it goes somewhere completely different. And that's why it's number 2. It's awesome. Instinct. All right, here we go. We're at number 1. This is it. The top movie that you probably haven't seen. Here's the funny part, or the crazy part. This movie might actually be my favorite movie ever. Not just the top movie you haven't ever seen, but the top movie ever, in my opinion. I don't know. I could be crazy though, but who knows? But here it is. It is Immortal Beloved. This movie has the greatest performance of any actor I've ever seen. Gary Oldman plays Beethoven. And he plays him from when he's like in his early 20s all the way until he dies. And every place in between. He has the passion. He has the joy, the sorrow, the anger, all the things that you hear about Beethoven and the things he went through. Gary Oldman portrays perfectly. But not only that, there's just a great story wrapped around it. What happens in the beginning of the movie is it starts with Beethoven's death. You're like, what? It starts with his death? Yeah. And in his will, he leaves everything he has to his immortal beloved. But he doesn't tell anybody, he doesn't explain who that is. And Beethoven's assistant, Schindler, takes it upon himself. He's like, listen, I need to find out who this immortal beloved is. I need to find this person. This is what the maestro wanted. I need to find who this is. And the whole movie is him kind of investigating and talking to people who were important in Beethoven's life about to try to figure out who the immortal beloved is. So it's got all these flashbacks of things within his life and all these people telling stories of how, what happened with him and whether they were the most important thing to him or not, or so forth, or where he went or what he was doing. And behind it all is Beethoven's music. And it just heightens it. It's almost like the Beethoven's music is like a character of its own. And the acting, like I said, by everyone in this film is amazing. And it's like a mystery where you're piecing things together, or you're watching Schindler try to piece things together, and all these flashbacks, and the performance of Gary Oldman in every single scene he's in is just, it's amazing. And every time I cry every time at the end of this movie, because when you realize that one thing could have changed a whole bunch of things for him in his life, it's crazy. And that's and it's probably, how much of it is true, I don't know. But I'm talking about how great a movie it is. It is an awesome, awesome movie. Probably my favorite movie of all time. Immortal Beloved. The #1 movie you've probably never seen. But man, you need to. So that was the first episode of Ben's Top 10s. The top 10 movies you probably haven't seen before. Just a heads up. All those movies were rated PG-13 except for Instinct, Thunderheart, Immortal Beloved, and probably Wrestling Ernest Hemingway are all rated R. So if you want to watch them with family, that's, just know who you're watching it with, is what I'm trying to say. Those 3 were rated R. The other ones are all PG-13, but that's up to you what you want to do. So, what did you think of those movies? Have you seen them yourself? Leave a comment, let me know if you think they stink, if you agree with me. Maybe even better is if there's a bunch of movies that you think that I haven't seen that I would like. Leave a message, let me know. I mean, I got time right now, I can watch a bunch of movies, so that'd be perfect. So thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll make another one of these sometime, another Ben's Top 10s. But as of now, this is the first one. Thanks. See ya.